and in the Giza. Put it in the freezer.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible. To be invincible, we'll be
Oh, fuck yeah. We are up early with the coffee for the London game. We're going live for an hour here, and we're going to enjoy us a little bit of British humor.
Mr. Geezer, put cans in the freezer. And Robinson. And Robinson. Have a breezer.
Okay. We don't do that.
Why can't you do that?
No.
Get a couple of cans, put them in the freezer. Shirley and Lisa, gonna have a pizza. Do you know Rita? You don't know Rita? We're gonna have a pizza. Oi, oi.
Okay.
Fantastic. Okay. Boom, I've got all the letters, Susie. Blood clot. Fantastic. So what do I win, eh?
Yeah, blood clot. So, our first question of the day. This person is your genetic clone. They look exactly like you and have the same levels of intelligence and confidence. They desire and fear the same things you do. The only differences are whatever they've gained from their own personal experiences since their creation. It has come to your attention that your clone is trying to destroy you. The definition of destruction is whatever that means to you. Some people say your clone is trying to destroy you because it is the evil version of you, while others insist your clone is trying to kill you because you are the evil version. Hey, it's 2023, and Twitter is what Twitter is. You have three options. You can go into hiding, you can meet your clone and try to use reason and diplomacy, or you can attempt to destroy your clone before it destroys you. So which option would you select out there, the listeners? Drop it in the comments. For me, my gut instinct, even though, like, not that I'm like afraid to take on my clone in a fight or anything, but my natural instinct is I'm a talker. So I feel like that's probably what I would do, is I would be trying to use some sense of diplomacy and convince my clone that it's better for both of us if we exist. And if we actually like work together, it's almost like the identical twin thing where, hey, look, I got this class. I need you to drop in for me. I'm not feeling great. I need you to drop in at work for me, and vice versa. Kind of live reverse lives. I don't know. That's my take on it anyways. Let's go see if we can find some actual football questions, though. I know there's tons and tons all over the Fantasy Football Advice Network, so go check that out. All right. Let's start here. Pick two. Need help badly. Feels like everyone is stressing this week, too, because there's so many. This is like a make or break week. I get it. One of my Yahoo leagues, I'm like getting absolutely crushed. I'm 0-3. So I feel it. Full PPR. Lockett. I'm confused. I only see two here. I'll just put in a third one, I guess. Lockett, Mike Evans, or Calvin Ridley going this morning. We'll just pretend that's a thing. In that case, those are three solid options where I feel like I would be willing to sit Mike Evans. Now, in most leagues, you're not sitting Mike Evans. He's been crushing. But that Lattimore matchup, historically, through his career, has always been rough. He's often had his worst games facing Lattimore. The Saints' defense overall is extremely tough. So if I had really good options, which totally feasible that you could have Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, and Mike Evans on your roster, in that instance, I would be starting Calvin Ridley this morning and Tyler Lockett on Monday. You get the benefit of those island games where like you'll have something invested early this morning, and then on Monday as well, you'll have Lockett going. But Mike Evans to me is borderline this week, where if you have, again, very deep wide receiver roster and you don't need to start that many. So, for example, if you're in a league where it's only start 2 wide receiver and maybe 1 flex option or 2 flex options, and you have 4 or 5 really good wide receiver, I would be considering pivoting from Mike Evans. But again, I'm not just abandoning ship and going to, whatever pot shot. Like a hard one for me would be Marvin Mims, because I do see the upside. But on the flip side, I would not be playing Darnell Mooney over Mike Evans just because of the potential matchup. Here's one. Jerome Ford or Joe Mixon. I would roll. I know Tennessee's been tough, but Jerome Ford on a yards per carry basis struggled. I do think Tennessee's defense is really tough, but I would roll. I mean, Ford got in for the 2 touchdowns. If not for that, he would have had a really bad week. I think I would roll with Joe Mixon just as the safer option there. Running backs are just abysmal already. Like it's week 4 and running backs. Najee Harris is supposed to be a slam dunk, and you literally can't even trust it.
Do you want to see me dunk?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. Are you guys ready? I'm okay. No, don't worry.
Does that always happen?
That stupid fucking clip makes me laugh every single time. DK Metcalf, Josh Palmer, or DeAndre Hopkins, pick 2 in a PPR league, I'm assuming. Actually, you know what? It's 2023, it's so rare, but let's go non-PPR for the rare non-PPR leagues. If it's non-PPR, I'm going DK and Josh Palmer. If it is PPR, I might still be willing to try and take the floor on DeAndre Hopkins, but it's been pretty terrible. All right, we got a couple questions in the chat here from my boy Raphael. Shout out to him. He's we're just like friends. We met through playing in leagues together, and he's always just like hit me up for advice, just like regular, even before I ever had a show. So shout out to him. Rashee Rice versus the Jets, or I'm assuming this is Khalil Herbert versus Denver. I'm going with Khalil Herbert. Like in this instance, it's just like Rashee Rice seems like a floor play. I do understand if it's full PPR, I might consider it if all my other options are just killer. But Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson today have not the same upside, obviously, as a Raheem Mostert and a Devon Achane. But we saw how bad Denver was against the run and how much they got torched by the Dolphins. So I bet there's going to be a lot of people starting Khalil Herbert. And I would be starting him over, for example, Ezekiel Elliott in a revenge game. I would be starting Khalil Herbert there. my gut instinct is to go for the upside with Herbert because I would much rather put Herbert in. And, if he struggles and doesn't have the greatest game, it's still going to be, I feel like, an approximation of Rashee Rice's score, because Rashee Rice, to me, the upside is you're hoping that he gets like 6 for 60 and a touchdown. And if he doesn't get that touchdown, it's not going to feel good. Shout out to Fantasy Blue Chip also. Just, you don't want to have that option on the bench where you're like, I knew that guy was going to go for 30 points and had that potential, and I went for the safe option. So I'm going Khalil Herbert here confidently. And then also he came in with Sanders versus, I'm guessing this has to be the running back. Oh, yeah, it's Carolina. So, yeah, Miles Sanders versus Minnesota, or Mike Evans versus the Saints. Yeah, I mean, I know Miles Sanders hasn't been exactly what we want, but that Minnesota matchup is hard to ignore. Oh, this one is a struggle for me. Again, the Lattimore matchup is the only thing that makes me hesitate, because otherwise, most weeks for me, this would be Mike Evans immediately. I think I lean slightly with Miles Sanders here. Though, and the thing too is Carolina, it has been better than we expect, and I think it's going to be Andy Dalton again. So I don't know that they're going to get blown out or anything. And Minnesota just lets teams hang around. Miles Sanders feels like more of a lock for a touchdown. So I'm going to go with Miles Sanders. Again, I feel like, especially, if you're 1-2 or 0-3 in any of these leagues, definitely be looking for the upside shots and trying to avoid the safe floor plays. That's where Mike Evans feels like, I still think he's going to get his, 3 for 50, but I don't expect the blow up game against Lattimore and the Saints defense. That's my struggle. So if you do play Mike Evans, you need to temper expectations, and maybe, he's an all-pro future Hall of Famer, legit. So, I mean, he could overcome the matchup, but historically has always struggled against, in particular, Lattimore and the Saints. So my final answer, again, Miles Sanders. Which is funny because just in general, my strategy lately has been to pivot away from the running backs because of not even just the potential for injury and everything, but the potential just to bust if they don't get that receiving work, which, some teams have promised us, and we just haven't seen it come out on the field, whether it's through scheme or, just through coaching. And I get it. Sometimes fans lament the game plan from coaches, but real life football is always going to take place ahead of fantasy football. And you need to be using that almost as part of your predictive model. Anytime you're looking at potential fantasy output and scoring, it's often even just taking a quick look at the games today, everyone and their grandmother, I would bet, is looking at that Chargers-Raiders game and expecting a high score. It's a division matchup. I could see it where they end up running the ball. That could be the Josh Kelly game now that everyone's completely off of him. That's just the nature of football and how fantasy works. Ironically enough, I have a best ball that I did for the afternoons. I'll go pull it up here. I was sitting there and I took I did take Justin Herbert for the potential upside, because in the afternoon games, besides, I think it was Purdy was the other one that I was looking at. Let's go take a look here. The 2-minute drill. Okay, yeah. So Purdy-licious was the other one I was looking at. So in the 2-minute drill, so these are afternoon only week 4 slate games. And my first pick, I went with Justin Herbert, because to me, he does have the potential to hit the highest score out of all those quarterbacks. and it's a onesie position. And then I came around in the second, I took George Kittle because not only is Debo and Brandon Ayuk banged up, whether or not they play, they are, both of them a little nicked up right now. So I love George Kittle already. They're at home. And Arizona Cardinals, historically, whether the defense has been good or not, just always gives it up to the tight end. So I've been very heavily invested. All my weekly best balls essentially hinge on George Kittle this week because it feels to me like the big George Kittle week. That's what I'm banking on and hoping for all these lineups. And then coming back in the third, Devontae Adams was there. And I'm like, is Devontae Adams hurt or something? Like, I'm confused. And so now I understand, it's because Jimmy Garoppolo is out and it's going to be Aiden O'Connell. Look, it could be me at quarterback for Devontae Adams. He's a baller. Like, he's no way he should have made it to me there. I think Aiden O'Connell is, sneaky, potentially competent. He had a really good preseason. We'll see how that translates in terms of the regular season, but it's not like the Chargers defense is, this insane top 10 unit. I could see O'Connell having a good game. I could see Devontae having a really good game. And then, so I had to fill out the rest of this roster. I ended up taking Josh Palmer. I also took Josh Kelly because, again, just it's that thing of hedging almost against yourself. So I've been very much with the consensus on Josh Kelly of you should have started him last week, and it didn't work out. It just happens sometimes. And it feels like nobody wants to start him this week, and it absolutely could be a smash week for him, so I have him in my lineup. And I took Zeke, just in case that actually does turn into a revenge game. So fingers crossed on the 2-minute drill there. We'll go back into this and see a couple more questions. Kyron Williams or Ramondre Stevenson? I would still be on the Ramondre Stevenson train, but against Dallas, I think I would go with Kyron Williams there, actually. Just he kind of has that backfield to himself. He's got passing upside. I think Ramondre's been disappointing, and it's Bellatrix. This is just what happens all the time. And I'm most confused that he hasn't been more involved in the passing game, if anything. Like Ramondre, to me, that's one of the best aspects of his game is how good he is at catching the ball out of the backfield. And they just don't really have like a bunch of wide receivers or anything. So it's confusing to me that Ramondre hasn't been much more heavily involved in the pass game. Like he was, I think he had 6 for 60-ish in week 1. But since then, he really just kind of hasn't been involved in the pass game. And then last week, they had that super gross game against the Jets where they still won, but it was bad for fantasy all around. And I kind of thought that Ramondre would be the exception. And even in that game script, he wasn't. So it does make me nervous how much they are splitting with Zeke. So at this point, I wouldn't be really selling Ramondre. This is just in general, too. All these running backs that are struggling, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Dameon Pierce, Ramondre Stevenson, whoever else you want to add to the list, there's not really a point in trading them. Josh Jacobs, too. Like, you just hold firm. The running backs, they will get better at some point, you assume. And, again, this is for redraft. I can understand not wanting to get stuck holding the bag in Dynasty. I made a big pivot in the offseason getting just away from running backs in general. I made trades where I sent away Josh Jacobs and I got back Tyreek Hill, and that's worked out swimmingly. So I understand that model. But in a redraft, like, you're not going to get back the commensurate value for these running backs that were highly drafted, and they are eventually going to have good games. You just got to kind of ride it out. And no player is perfect. Not like it's all. There's almost like this misnomer, I feel like sometimes, where if a player is not Justin Jefferson, where they're just cracking off 150 yards every single game, it's like they suck for fantasy. It's like, look, there are ebbs and flows to everyone's game. even the superstars for the most part. There's only a handful of Christian McCaffreys and Justin Jeffersons out there. Even Jamar Chase has had his struggles. So you have to be willing to go with the ebbs and flows of fantasy. And it's not always just as easy as predicting, oh, well, it's matchup this and, it's game. There's like so many different intangibles that are behind the scenes that we don't even see before we talk about the actual tangible aspects of scheme, game plan, game script, usage, snappers, myriad aspects to why a player might struggle one game and then pop off to the next. Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane could do absolutely nothing this week, and they are still the running backs that you should be starting over probably 70 to 80% of the field at this point, for the simple fact of knowing that the upside is potentially anywhere from 20 to now 50 points. Not that that's what it would ever be in any other game. That's silly. But jokingly, you can expect that on any given week, they could have 0, they could have 25. And when they have that 25, it's a week winning performance. And when you're able to use that as kind of like an RB2, RB3 flex option, that's kind of what puts you over most weeks. A lot of weeks, you got a consistent core that will get you the base points, but then you got to put in those pot shots to put yourself over the edge more weeks often than not. So here's a kind of a perfect option. Pick 2 running backs, Zach Moss, Raheem Mostert, or Joe Mixon. Even with the matchup against Buffalo, I'm still rolling with Raheem Mostert. If he goes out and scores 0, it was still the right decision because the potential for him to go out and score 20 is very real. So, and between Zach Moss and Joe Mixon, I just think Zach Moss has been, I'm going with the hot hand, like the coaches always say, and Zach Moss has been crushing it. So, and again, the matchup with Tennessee is pretty rough. So I would roll with Zach Moss and Raheem Mostert there. Ooh, a defensive question. Here we go. And it's 2. If this is kind of, you lose, like you can't lose with this. This is, I feel like no matter who you've got, you're going to win. Chiefs versus Jets, Eagles versus Washington Commanders. Almost slipped up there and called them the Skins. Yeah, the Jets have been horrible, and the Chiefs, the Kel Swifties are in full force for the Chiefs. But I'm still rolling with the Eagles, especially if Sam Howell's going to – I'm not even sure if we're going to see Sam Howell. We could potentially see Jacoby Brissett. That is a real thing that could happen, especially after the game Howell had last week. But if they decide to go with Howell, he got absolutely massacred last week, so – I'm not entirely sure what they're even planning. Yeah, that's rough. I would go with the Eagles still. They've been so good. I think you just have to keep rolling with the Eagles. Though I understand the question. This is hilarious that this is even a question now. Calvin Ridley or Adam Thielen? Start one. That's a little pat on the back for telling literally everyone to draft Adam Thielen in the final rounds. And when I would go on other shows, I cannot tell you how many times I tweeted it out and other people would laugh at me. And this is, again, something I learned in my early days of playing fantasy. Shout out to my boy Cody. He would always get these aged veterans that people just didn't want, felt like they had no value, and consistently they would produce. The 2 that I always remember are Larry Fitzgerald, and I'm not talking about Larry Fitzgerald with Kurt Warner. I'm talking about like 5 years after that. I'm talking about the late stage Larry Fitz that was like still getting it done by hook and crook and PPR. I'm talking about Delaney Walker when he popped up with the Titans there. Adam Thielen was still good last year as an NFL player. He is consistently targeted on third down and on red zone. Whether it's Andy Dalton, who just hyper targets him even more, or whether it is Bryce Young, who still is looking for Adam Thielen as his first read, Adam Thielen is the wide receiver to own for the Carolina Panthers. I have consistently believed that from the time that he signed there to now, until if he does get injured, which is possible as a veteran, but he kind of reminds me of Jordy Nelson, where it was the route running and the moves in and out of the seam and the red zone ability. Like, he does remind me very much of Jordy Nelson in that way. And obviously he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, but again, with Andy Dalton back there, he's going to pepper him with targets. And we saw last week was a crazy ceiling that I was certainly not expecting. I thought that more consistently we would see week 2 production from Adam Thielen, where he would have like the 6 for 60 and a touchdown. And to go off for like 10 and 140, that to me is nuts. So this week, the fact that it's the Minnesota revenge game, and but Calvin Ridley's got the Falcons revenge game, double revenge game. This feels like a very this is a win-win question. Also, it feels like, I think I would have a very difficult time, even as much as I love Adam Thielen, putting him in my lineup over Calvin Ridley. I would definitely be finding a way to start both of these players. So if you have a running back in the flex, for example, that better be like, I don't even know who you would have, honestly, above Calvin Ridley or Adam Thielen this week as a running back. I'm struggling. Besides like Christian McCaffrey, obviously, but who else really? Tony Pollard, but New England matchup sucks. Maybe James Cook. I like him in that matchup. No, I would be starting both of them. But if you gun to my head, you force me to pick, I'm going to take Calvin Ridley and the talent. He had the week 1 explosion. It's been quiet since. However, he has been targeted in the red zone. He didn't get his feet down on one. Happened to Zay Jones also. So that was just like a weird game. And it just feels like they've kind of been in a bit of a lull. Feels like the London game. The Jags are always kind of, treated as the home team. And again, that revenge factor against the Falcons. Though I don't know necessarily that Calvin Ridley would view it that way based on, how he exited. But no, I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley, the talent there. I got to go with Calvin Ridley there. Who to play in the flex, Tank Dell or Brian Robinson? I like Brian Robinson a lot, but and he would be a trade target of mine, especially if he doesn't do that well this week. He's still the running back to own there, so I would be potentially, hoping that he doesn't have like a huge explosive game. Like if I'm the fantasy manager, or if you are, I'm hoping he has a good game for you. But if you're someone who doesn't own him, then I would be hoping that, he maybe has one more quiet game, and maybe he might be able to be acquired. But I would definitely be going with Tank Dell there. This is crazy. The Tank Dell fever is for real. Tank Dell, Chris Godwin, or DJ Moore in half-point PPR. I'm actually going with Godwin and DJ Moore. If Justin Fields is going to have a good game against the Denver offense, it feels like it's going to be an explosive DJ Moore week. I could see him, taking a screen to the house like he did in the preseason. I think it's DJ Moore and Chris Godwin, especially because, you would expect that Mike Evans is going to be occupied with Lattimore, and we could see more of Godwin in that matchup. Though I really like Tank Dell. I do. I have him in a few lineups. But in that situation, I would still be going DJ Moore and Chris Godwin, I feel like. Unless I was just my team sucks, my team's 0-3, and I desperately need upside, I might go DJ Moore and Tank Dell. Chris Godwin is more of the safe PPR floor play. But I could see him having a really good game is the problem. Quarterback, Joe Burrow or Anthony Richardson? Man, I love Anthony Richardson, but can this guy get through a game without getting hurt, please? I'm still going with Anthony Richardson, though, based on what we've seen from Burrow. Kyron Williams or Travis Etienne rest of season? Yeah, that's Travis Etienne for me still. Travis Etienne is an incredibly talented player, and he has had good games. Tank Bigsby hasn't come in and usurped the role in any way. Here we go. This one looks. Who the hell is this? I don't even. Jeez. Okay. Oh. Well, I'm just gonna go with the first two because I'm not even sure who this third one is. K. Kirk versus Atlanta. Oh, he fixed it. Oops, Christian Kirk versus Atlanta. Yeah, that makes more sense. Or Gabe Davis versus the Dolphins. This is a very interesting question. To me, this is floor versus ceiling. So Christian Kirk or Gabe Davis. This is very much like a floor versus ceiling play where if you need the floor, I would go with Christian Kirk. But let me check something quick here. I know Zay Jones is banged up. I don't think he's expected to play. So that does open up some targets. I just want to see. There we go. PFF. Oh, yeah. Shout out to PFF. Okay, so here's the struggle. Oh, wait, that's... Oh, no, this is not what I want. Okay, so yes, play Christian Kirk. Wow, that took way longer, and that was a great video. Okay, let's recap that so I can... So Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis. This is an excellent question. So Christian Kirk versus Atlanta Falcons kicking off in 27 minutes. Gabe Davis in the potential high-scoring matchup against Miami. I would be going with Christian Kirk if I need the floor play. I just double-checked. That's what I was kind of diddling my time there with. The Atlanta Falcons are running more man coverage this year, which is good because Christian Kirk struggles against zone coverage. He is much better against man coverage. So he's a viable option and to me a safer floor play this week. So if you have a really high octane team already, go ahead and just slide in Christian Kirk as the safe floor play. However, lots of 0-3 teams out there. I would be putting in Gabe Davis if you need the potential explosion. Yes, Christian Kirk could very easily have 8 for 100 yards. Now, if you're in full PPR, that's still pretty good upside. And even in that case, I think, Gabe Davis is more scary of an option. But unlike Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis has that explosive potential. I could see him having the monster game, especially they're going to want to, it feels like they're going to want to do to the Dolphins a little bit what the Dolphins did to the Broncos. I could see a lot of deep shots to Gabe Davis. I could see this being the monster, 150, 200 yard, 2-touchdown Gabe Davis week. I'm trying to get Gabe Davis into as many lineups as humanly possible this week, especially the ones where I feel like I just need a monster week from someone to get me over the hump, to get me a win so that I don't slide to 0-4. I don't think I've ever had a team come back from 0-4. I have the best, I think, with a losing team that I've ever done a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away with my close personal friend, James Deco. We were in the Danger Zone League. Shout out to Adam Rank, James Coe, Matt Franchise, Franciscovich, Matt Harmon, Marcus Grant, and even Faz, Michael Fabiano, all of those guys, like the original cast and crew on the NFL Fantasy Show, one of the very early shows that I followed a long time ago. They had this segment called The Danger Zone. And they did a fan league, a bunch of listener leagues, and I got in one of the very first ones for the Danger Zone. It was a 16-team league. I started off 2-5. I was doing awful. I turned that team around. I took it all the way to the semifinals just for Blair Walsh to miss all the kicks, and I ended up losing by like 3 points or something. I would have made it to the chip where I would have got absolutely handled, but I could have at least said I made it to the chip. But no, I lost in the semis because of Blair Walsh, which is probably my biggest fantasy football horror story of all time. So anyways, getting all the way back to it, if you really need like the huge upside, I would be going with Gabe Davis, but Christian Kirk to me is absolutely like the safer floor play. And if that's what you're looking for, especially because Atlanta's been running more of the man coverage, I would be going with Christian Kirk for floor and Gabe Davis for like high ceiling. But in full PPR, even I would struggle to not play Christian Kirk over Gabe Davis, because it just feels like if Gabe Davis is going to succeed, it's going to be like, it could literally be like 4 for 200 because he just caught like, 270-yard bombs or whatever. But that's less likely and less feasible than just Christian Kirk going 8 for 100 because, Zay Jones isn't as available. But he also still has to share with Calvin Ridley and Evan Ingram and just, Travis Etienne out of the backfield. Whereas, like, it feels like with Buffalo, it is siphoned a little bit more where it's more narrowed onto the focus really is on Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis 1-2. But, yeah, I think, again, if it was me, I tend to be a little bit more risky and I would be trying to find a way to play both of them. Again, there's almost no running backs that I would play over those two players that you could name to me this week, especially with all the terrible, terrible matchups. Just quickly, let's go through the running backs even before I go dive and look for more questions. Like, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane absolutely popped and should be in your lineup, but they also play the Bills, who have a really tough defense and just shut down Brian Robinson, who is obviously a different type of player, but just, maybe temper expectations a little bit. They are not the Broncos defense. You look at Miles Sanders, probably has a really good matchup, and so, but, he's struggled, but I would play him over, I think, maybe Gabe Davis, but not Christian Kirk. Broncos, Bears, like, Jerome Ford, the hot pickup. He's got the Ravens, Najee Harris. That one's the saddest to me. That should be like an absolute smash against Texans defense, but no idea with Matt Canada's offense. I don't trust it anymore. To me, he's at best an RB2. I would be starting James Cook above him. I would be starting. The problem is like I was saying, the matchups. Like Derrick Henry is basically the same thing. It feels like as Najee, like same potential for failure and upside right now because of the tough Bengals matchup. But I think Derrick Henry's more likely to get it done. DeAndre Swift is interesting. I think I would, with what we've seen the last couple of games, they're riding him. I would go with Swift over Najee. Bucks, Saints, Rashad White. That's kind of my barrier where I think if I'm deciding between Rashad White and Najee, I'm just going to go with the matchup, pure matchup based. It sucks to me that that's where Najee's at. I honestly probably would play Zach Moss and Kyron Williams over Najee. That Rams Colts matchup, that could end up being a sneaky high scoring matchup. It's always those like ones that nobody cares about and no one really expects that kind of end up blowing up. I could see that happening with that game. This Kenneth Walker is a smash. I like him. Saquon, if he plays, I would play him above Najee. The Jets running backs, honestly, if you can trade Breece Hall for anything worthwhile, here's actually a perfect example. If you could go and trade Breece Hall for Najee Harris straight up, I would do that because the Najee Harris owner is feeling really bad, and they might look at Breece Hall as having potential future upside where they might be thinking Najee Harris doesn't have any. And I don't see the upside. The fact that they brought in Trevor Siemian tells me that they're potentially going to double down on Zach Wilson rest of season. The only thing that can save Breece Hall at this point is if they do trade for an actual competent quarterback, but that's the bet. You're betting on, Najee is really gross, but he's still operating as an RB2, RB3, whereas Breece Hall is dead in the water if there's not another quarterback coming in. James Conner, doesn't matter the matchup, but I'm playing him over Najee. Just showing where my bar is. Tony Pollard, even with the Patriots matchup, 100% Tony Pollard is in for me. Josh Kelly. If Austin Eckler doesn't play, is this a Josh Kelly week, and would you play him over Najee Harris? I personally would not be able to do it because of my love for Najee and love for the Steelers and my hope, prayer, and will that they fucking figure out how to use this man. But I honestly, I think I could easily be wrong, and that sucks. Josh Jacobs, even with Josh Jacobs struggling, I would play him over Najee. So, yeah, it's rough out there for running backs, and it's not good matchups this week. I feel like I'm really struggling. Yeah. I hate it. I hate everything about it. Fuck. Blame Canada. Nothing we can do. All right. I put my phone down, but I need it for questions. I'll go get a couple more questions here, and then I'm going to wrap this up so I can get ready for the London game. Here we go. Puka Nacua or Tank Dell? Oh, Tank Dell's, I told you, he's the hotness right now on the waiver wire. And yes, Steelers defense, very good front seven, bad cornerbacks. Patrick Peterson, I love him as a player, but he's obviously like an aged veteran. He's not, his former glory days self. Joey Porter still coming along. So we can be had through the year, but it's Puka Nacua easily for me. Here we go. Tank Dell again. Tank Dell, easily the most popular question, it feels like. Tank Dell or Adam Thielen? I'm going with Adam Thielen. Ooh, here we go. Javonte Williams, Derrick Henry, or Gus Bus. That's how bad it is. Start 2. You know what? As I can tell you that often my answers are in the minority. I'm not starting Javonte Williams. The upside to me is even in this matchup, it's 15 touches. Yeah, he might score, and I think you're hoping that's what it is, that he scores once or twice. I think this the Denver Bears game, it feels like everyone's kind of expecting a high scoring matchup, and I think it could really turn into an ugly off. This could easily turn into some shit we saw with the Patriots Jets last week where it's like 15-10. And I'm telling you, Javonte, it's a miracle that he's back at all, but he is not all the way back. And this team, go look at the box score. They're not giving him more than 12 to 15 touches a game. So between Javonte Williams, Derrick Henry, and Gus Bus, I'm actually still rolling with Derrick Henry and Gus Bus. And it's because I feel like Javonte Williams is being capped by his coaches. Again, it's a miracle that he's playing at all. I think it's incredible in terms of like a feat from a human being standpoint. But for fantasy football, he's going to get pulled out after about 12 to 15 touches. He's not really getting used that much in the passing game. It's all carries right now. So it very much feels like he's going to end with 12 for 60 and maybe a touchdown, and you're praying for that touchdown. That's the upside. That's the ceiling. Derrick Henry is still Derrick Henry. I get it. It was a gross game. Tajay snap percentage Spears is stealing all his opportunities. Tajay Spears had 8 fucking carries. 4 carries, 4 receptions. He had 8 fucking touches for 9 yards. He's not stealing a goddamn thing. Derrick Henry is still very much the king in Tennessee. The whole offense just sucks. Ryan Tannehill is clearly at the tail end of his career. They don't really have a backup option because neither Malik Willis nor Will Levis is ready to just come in and take over an NFL offense in any shape or form or capacity. And the offensive line is struggling, and they are having just struggles all around. It's struggle bus for the Titans. When they are in positive game scripts, we're still going to see the 25-touch Derrick Henry games like we saw against the Chargers. And things will get better because all their tough matchups are really at the beginning of the season. They also have kind of an early bye week, which is actually good for this team because they're already a little beat up. So make sure that you're holding Derrick Henry, especially in redraft, because come playoff time, his schedule is insane. He sees Houston twice, including week 17. That's the money matchup where he's going to be at Houston, and they've already confirmed like Titans are going to be in those powder blues. He's guaranteed going for 200 yards in that game. So make sure you hold Derrick Henry. The playoff schedule's juice. He's still going to have good games in spite of the matchups. And running backs are fucking abysmal right now. Like, what else are you going to do? I would not be just trading him to get, like, Kyron Williams just because he's, like, the hotness this week. Ooh, here's a gross one. Sky Moore or Jahan Dotson? The fall off for Jahan Dotson has been absolutely real. The Eagles matchup is real. As gross as it is, and as much as I'm not a proponent of starting any Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver because you literally have no idea who it's going to be any given week, I'm still going with Sky Moore there. T. Higgins or George Pickens? I'm actually rolling with Pickens. He's the number 1 receiving option. He's basically got whatever little passing value that they have in terms of the Steelers passing offense. It's pretty much all going to George Pickens 1, and then some of the tertiary targets after the running back dump offs are going to Freiermuth. But for the most part, like all the downfield stuff is George Pickens, and it does feel like he's going to get loose in this game. And T. Higgins is just. This was always my concern and why I called him potentially a bust for fantasy football because he's an excellent real-life player. This is where real-life football and fantasy football collide. where he is an excellent wide receiver too. He would be a great wide receiver one even on many teams. The problem is with Burrow struggling and being the wide receiver two with a clearly superior player in Jamar Chase ahead of him, he's going to have ebbs and flows, and his ebbs often will come in games like this against the Titans. So I would be looking to pivot away from Higgins if I had an excellent option, and I see George Pickens as being a really good option. Brandon Ayuk or DeAndre Swift? I'm going with Swift. I know Ayuk is probably going to play. I do have lineups where I'm going to be putting him in, but if I had a really good option in a shallower league like a DeAndre Swift, I would go with the safer play. Just because Ayuk, if anything, God forbid, happens, feels like he could exit early. To me, this is also, I feels like the big George Kittle week. With the other two guys kind of banged up, I could see them being a little bit more decoy than actually like usurping targets. So I'm rolling with DeAndre Swift there. Oof, half PPR, tight end, grossness. All the tight ends are gross. This is very much pot shot. Hunter Henry or Cole Kmet? I've been a Hunter Henry proponent all year. I said when Travis Kelce was out week one that Hunter Henry was the number one tight end pickup to get. I'm trying not to play him this week if I can. I don't like the Dallas matchup. I'm going with Cole Kmet here. I know it's been bad, but it just feels like I actually feel like the Denver Broncos, Chicago Bears gross off, if it does turn high scoring, is going to be more through the air this week as opposed to on the ground. So I would be going with Cole Kmet and hoping that he catches a touchdown. Again, very popular Tank Dell. Kyron Williams, Tank Dell, or Ramondre Stevenson. I'm going with Kyron and Tank Dell. I'm going with upside, especially if I'm one of these 0-3 teams, which I have in a couple leagues. Tank Dell, Christian Kirk, or DJ Moore. I kind of answered a variation of that earlier. This is where I feel like I would take more. Christian Kirk to me is the safe option, and then I'm deciding between Tank and DJ, and I'm going with DJ because it feels like a lot of people could be pivoting away from Fields. Some people are still banging the table that this is going to be a smash Justin Fields week. I have one lineup where I'm just kind of going to roll the dice on Fields. It was one where I'm kind of hedging the bet because I sat him in another league for Jordan Love, which did not feel great for most of the Thursday game until he came through late. So hopefully that won't kill me in that league. But I would be playing DJ Moore and Christian Kirk. Oh, James Conner or Jerome Ford. That's easily James Conner. I don't care about the matchups. James Conner every week at this point. And here, we're actually going to end on a trade question. James Conner, Brandon Ayuk, and Puka Nacua going one way. Coming back, Tony Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson. So I don't actually, the manager was asking if this was a good trade. They were the ones, they were receiving Conner, Ayuk, and Nacua. So shout out to you, Travis P. In the chat for the Fantasy Football Advice Network. I like this trade a lot for you. I like the James Conner side a lot. I think Tony Pollard has been much better than I expected. The Dallas offense has actually looked similar to what I expected, but Tony Pollard's just getting all the volume, and he is succeeding with it. He's doing well right now. So I like Pollard, but James Conner, to me, is almost just as good of an option. And I feel like that's a big upgrade to your wide receiver room. You get two potentially even when Cooper Kupp comes back, shout out to Matt Harmon of Reception Perception. He has mentioned that Puka Nacua fits more of the Robert Woods role, and I feel like he can coexist better with Cooper Kupp, whereas Cooper Kupp may usurp some of Tutu Atwell's work that he's seen as of late. So I think Puka Nacua is going to be a whole rest of season. Love Brandon Ayuk. Once he's healthy, he's solid. and I like James Conner a lot. So I like this trade because I really like Ramondre Stevenson, but it just seems like it's Bellatrix again, and you're not going to know necessarily when to start him. And he is splitting work a little too evenly with Ezekiel Elliott. So that feels like a good pivot. I feel like you got commensurate value for Tony Pollard and Ramondre. It could still flip, but I like the trade. I like the trade for the James Conner side. So that's it for me. We got only 5 minutes left before the London games. I'm going to go quickly triple check all my lineups. They've been set since last night, but it's always good just to give it a quick eye before the actual games kick off. So if you've been in the comments, if you checked in at any point during the live stream, thank you so much. I will be back tomorrow with a very special guest. I'm not going to say who. But I'm going to be pre-recording tonight and doing a hockey draft at the same time, so that'll be interesting. So, again, thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you drop kick that sub button, super kick that bell to get notified for future live streams, and catch you all on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes